And actually, you kind of touched on bands on the East Coast seem to play a lot of cover songs. And I think there was one, you mentioned all the guitars. There was another story about Dee Snider, he'd been doing it in the clubs all night, all the time. And of course, he always wanted nothing but a good time as well. And I think Vito Bratta was in the audience, and he would, if he was like arms crossed and just kind of like taking it all in, and Dee kind of took him to task. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
I mean, Dee absolutely destroyed him. He like, the thing was getting Vito Bratta was like one of the big, he's done only like 2 or 3 interviews in the last 20 years. Like, he did not weather being thrown on the dustbin and told that he played guitar too well. Like, I think he kind of blew his mind. But yeah, he was there for that early scene. And so like, and he's very, like, he's really funny. Like, I wish like I could imitate his voice, but like, just the fact that like, Dee Snider on stage, they were apparently, and he says so in the book, like, adjusted for inflation, the members of Twisted Sister were each making like $300,000 a year playing covers. Like, they were doing really, really well. And it's kind of hard to imagine now. They were packing like 3,000 seaters 4 nights a week, So they were kind of like rock stars, but not really rock stars because it wasn't their music. But Dee Snider's thing was that he's very confrontational with the audience. Like, he exhorts the audience. He demands adulation and enthusiasm from the audience. And so like, if he didn't like who you were, he was like how you were acting, if he thought he wasn't getting his due, he was going to like pick you out and just excoriate you. And he did it. Like, that was one of his things like that. I think he did that like every night, part of his shtick, like, drum solo, and then I'm going to destroy somebody. But
knowing that
Vito Bratta literally was there. Like, he's this kid, he's like 18. He's like, loves Twisted Sister. He's like, they're using this amp and that amp, and I love this. But he's standing there with his arms crossed. And yeah, Dee Snider just like picked him out. They're like, this dude is not sufficiently animated, and destroyed him. But and just was like, listen, look at this guy. But what's kind of great about that story is that night after the gig, Vito and Dee meet again in the parking lot, and Dee really is the one who sets Vito straight. And he's like, Dee, because Vito Bratta is like, I don't want to play covers, blah, blah, blah. And Dee just grabs us like, look, you got to play in front of people, so you got to play covers. And Vito does that and gains a reputation, and then finally forms White Lion. But it's really sort of through this weird interaction that Dee Snider points Vito in the right, like, points his ship in the right direction, like, go do some covers, dude, it'll be okay, and sends him on his way. And to this day, when I apparently Vito still thanks Dee for like, tearing him a new one and then sort of pointing him in the right direction. And I guess it worked out pretty well, but there are a lot of good weird intersections of people in this book that you start discovering once you do all these